Uber shares rallied today, big time, spiking more than 38% after the company said it would have billions of dollars in cash at the end of this year, even in the bleakest scenarios about how the coronavirus would impact its business. I want to bring in Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi now in an exclusive interview. Dara, thank you so much for joining us. You're sheltering in place, just like we are, joining us from your home, so I appreciate you taking the time. I'm reminded that you ran Expedia. You ran a travel company through 9/11, through the financial crisis, and I'm so curious, how do you compare what we're going through now? Is this more or less terrifying?
I think that people are always guilty of recency bias, and I am subject to the same thing. I think this one's scarier, and it's scarier for a couple of reasons. I think September 11th was incredibly tragic, horrible, horrible event, but it was an event, and we instantly, or as close as possible to instantly, got back to rebuilding. It brought everyone together in a lot of right ways. And I think the financial panic was financial in nature, that found its way into everyday life, and obviously a very negative way. So it was deeply worrying as to the financial institutions and how they would hold up. And to some extent, what we're seeing now, it's actually the opposite, which is it's Main Street. Corona has affected everyday, everyone's lives all over the world almost instantly. It is moving so fast. And the worry is it going to creep into the financial system versus the financial system kind of creeping into the mainline system? So this is a scary time, and it's scary regardless of whom you are. I think my instinct is that we're finally taking the right steps to move in a good direction, and certainly Asia, China, Hong Kong, et cetera, have set a great example for us to follow. But this one's pretty tough.
So you said earlier today you had $10 billion in unrestricted cash at the end of last month. In the worst scenario, you'd have $4 billion at the end of this year. But you mentioned Hong Kong, which was down 45% from its peak at the height of the virus there. They're still down about 30% when it comes to rides. So, what gives you confidence that you do have enough cash to ride this out, not knowing how long this is going to last?
Well, the edge case scenario that we outlined assumed that essentially the world would be down 80% for the rest of the year. And I think what we're seeing with Hong Kong is there's a big hit. But once the health authorities get control of the situation, life does return. And when life returns, essentially Uber returns. Instantly in Hong Kong, we've had people going back to work. And as they go back to work, commuters, et cetera, start using our services as they always have. And I think if we assume that the health authorities, the cities, the governors, the presidents, all over the world are making the hard decisions and the necessary moves to control the virus, then eventually life will come back. And when life comes back, when people start going back to work, they're going to start using Uber. And just like in Hong Kong, we saw a deep trough and then a slow recovery. There's no reason that we won't see that. Even in a circumstance where you're down 80% of the rest of the year, we're still going to have $4 billion of cash. We're going to have access to a $2 billion revolver. We think it's highly, highly, highly unlikely, but we wanted to make sure that our investors knew that we are planning for the worst case, or we're essentially calculating what the worst case is. And then we're operationalizing to make sure that we're ready really for anything.
We obtained a memo that you sent to your employees earlier this week where you said, yes, this is scary, but what it is not is a full financial meltdown, saying that you're on incredibly solid financial footing, asset light, the majority of your costs are variable, and you can manage your business city by city, day by day, in a way unlike any other company in the world. That said, the coronavirus is new and a lot isn't understood. Based on what you've seen, is ride-sharing safe? Is food delivery safe?
I think that assuming that the right steps are being taken, then absolutely I do think it's safe. It is an asset light model, and we're seeing in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, we know in China, for example, ride sharing is coming back as well. So if people get back to work, then ride sharing is absolutely safe, and the variable cost nature that we have makes our business quite resilient. On the other side, on food, we're actually seeing food, especially in many countries where restaurants are not shut down, where you've got delivery services going. Actually, food is holding in some cases very strong, right? We have this incredible logistic network taking people to places or bringing things to people's homes, and more than ever it's going to be more important bringing things, foods, et cetera, to people's homes. So we actually think that the food business is a great stream diversifier, so to speak. So we think rides and eats are safe, and we think that they're especially safe because we've got the best balance sheet in the business.
But what about the public health issue here? What about the customers who are scared to get in the car and scared of getting the virus? The drivers who are scared of driving passengers, would you put your kids in an Uber right now?
Well, I think these are deeply personal decisions, and it depends on the circumstance. So I think you can't have a global answer for that. I live in San Francisco, and today I wouldn't put my kids in an Uber because the governor has specifically asked for us to lock down. And if you look at actually the Uber app right now, when you open an Uber app in San Francisco, we actually right there ask the person, is this a trip that you really need to take? Not too many businesses would say, you sure you want to use us? Most businesses would say, no, please use us, etc. But we think first responsibility is for everybody to step up to bend the curve, and we are doing the same, and we'll continue to do the same. We will be there for our drivers, we'll be there for our riders, but we all have to take steps to bend this curve.
You also mentioned the drivers in your memo to your staff, saying that you owe it to them to be there for them as much as possible, whether it's about their success or their safety. You've got drivers protesting outside your San Francisco headquarters today. They want you to give them money that you've earmarked for other things to make up for their depressed earnings. What do you have to say to them?
I think we are offering our drivers a financial assistance package, and we were the ones who led the way there in terms of if they're immunocompromised, if they do have to get tested for COVID and be off the road. We're working very closely with public health authorities there. So listen, we are doing everything that we can, and in circumstances where drivers specifically have to get off because they have to get tested or they may be sick, we're stepping up, and the industry is following suit as well.
These are unique times. Lyft is worth only $6 billion at this point, and I'm curious what you think this environment means for M&A. Would you consider M&A in the ride-sharing business right now, the ride-sharing space? Would you consider buying Lyft?
I think when you see shocks like this, usually the world stands still. So I don't see anything happening anytime soon. And frankly, for the right reasons, our focus right now is our riders, our eaters, our drivers, couriers, et cetera. Our focus is how do we make sure that our communities are safe, our employees are safe, and then how do we start preparing to rebuild? I do think that in a few months, as we see, and hopefully we will, and I'm confident that we will see cases plateauing, things starting to get better, the companies with the big balance sheets, the companies with big brands, the companies who have the diversity of businesses that we have are going to have the opportunity to consolidate. I don't want to name names, but I do think that consolidation in times of crises, you see consolidation. You saw it in the after September 11th in the airline industry and in the hotel industry, again, coming from travel. So consolidation absolutely happens in industries after moments of crises. I don't think this is an exception. And we've got a great opportunity to be a consolidator. But first things first, let's take care of our customers, drivers. We'll get to that later.
Okay, so then let's talk about what's already happened. You said, and this got lips flapping, that you have $1.5 billion in unrestricted cash for already signed deals. We know that Careem, a ride-sharing company in the Middle East, is one of those. What else?
Kareem is by far the biggest one. We have also signed a deal uh, to take a majority position in a company called Corner Shop. Corner Shop is in the grocery delivery business, big business in Chile, building in Mexico as well. And again, for the wrong reasons, but that business is absolutely exploding in the right way. Home grocery delivery is one of the parts of the business that is actually benefiting. So in this case, it's a bet that we're very confident is going to pay off, not just because of the times, but also because it's just a first class team. And the way that we look at it is Corner Shop has built this service locally in Latin American markets. We have a global brand, and we can essentially take Corner Shop and make it a global brand. And the category is a great category.
What about food delivery? I mean, do you see consolidation there, and do you think that Uber will be part of that?
I think it's certainly possible. We are one of the largest food delivery players on a global basis. We've got a really strong position in the US as well. And most of our other food, there are some food delivery players who are public and have access to capital. I can't say that for many players. So I think the subscale players, they're going to have trouble raising money. And again, once we get to a point where we understand the circumstances, we understand what's going on in the world, I do think there's going to be consolidation in food delivery, and we will be one of the consolidators.
Now, you've said that Uber would reach a measure of profitability by the end of this year. Will you still do that?
We're certainly targeting it, but right now, it's just that the world has completely changed. I don't want to let ourselves off the hook, but I'm much more focused on tomorrow and next week versus Q4. We did tell our investors that once we get a better view of trends, we will update them on guidance, but we didn't update guidance. We're not in a position to update guidance one way or the other. The business model itself can very much be profitable. And the fact that we have been working on this road or sprint to profitability because we move fast in everything that we do actually helps us in this environment very much. So it's still a target. We will update guidance when the time is right.
Now, as you've said, the world may be deeply changed after this. We don't know exactly what it looks like on the other side. Even if the virus is contained, it could resurge in the fall. It could resurge 3 or 4 times, in fact. What are the long-term repercussions that you are preparing for in your scenarios?
Right now the focus is the next couple of weeks. We will get to the long term. I think all of us have to understand exactly what this virus looks like, whether or not we get to herd immunity in countries or around the world, the state of vaccination, et cetera. So I think you're bringing up really great questions, but it's really too early to start to build a strategy for those questions. We're really focused on the ground tactics. We're a global company, so we have to get it right in every single city and country that we're operating in, and that's our focus now.
And last question, Dara, you've been talking about the drivers. I'm curious if you've been on the phone with any state or federal officials at this point and what you're lobbying for on the drivers' behalf to make sure that they don't miss out on any potential government protections.
We are certainly, personally, I have not been, but we do have, we're in very close contact with governments, with authorities, et cetera. And I do think that governments are going to step up for people to give them relief, et cetera. And we want to make sure that gig workers, independent workers are not left behind. So we want to make sure that we are one of those voices to make sure that we take care of everybody, including gig workers and independent workers.